Today on Rebel Then King. I didn't want to have to do this, but we're going to talk about AI. Welcome, adventurers. So AI is kind of all that anybody wants to talk or post about these days, so I guess here we go. I expect a lot of cheers and a lot of jeers on this one, so buckle up, I suppose. I am going to try to focus on how AI is used or could be or should or shouldn't be used in art, and I am going to lump TTRPGs into this because, well, frankly, there is a lot of literal artwork that goes along with it, and then story crafting and all of those kinds of things. I expect a lot of discussion on this one, so leave comments, let me know what you think. First, starting with, honestly, a critique of what I think AI is actually capable of doing sort of in this artistic realm. I think it is pretty astounding at creating relatively competent, but ultimately very meaningless artwork. Music, scripts, things like that, very quickly though. But I don't see it ever producing much greatness. I actually kind of think that using AI to generate quite a lot of things, whether that is an actual piece of art or even just a document at work, kind of shortcuts what the meaning of those things is. Creating a video, creating an image, creating a script, creating a document isn't about having the thing. It's not, the purpose of this is to have a document. That's not the end goal. The end goal is to convey something, to share some information, to get an idea out into the world, to organize a thought, those kinds of things. You don't write a document just to have the document. You write it to convey meaning. And honestly, what I see in a lot of AI-generated scripts, documents, music, those kinds of things, it's just kind of swirling ideas without much of a through line, no real impact, no real meaning to it. It's just sort of rehashed, remixed versions of what we already know without actually understanding any of the context or the subtext of what's going on, and certainly without adding any new value. So I think, sure, AI is great at creating something quickly, but we already have a lot of something out there. There are so many books to read, images to look at, TTRPGs to play, bands to listen to. We don't just need more stuff. We need more really good stuff, and I don't think AI is very good at that. But that's really not even my main problem with it. I, frankly, think it's pretty atrocious that we are now using AI to replace the most valuable and most human things that humans do. Sure, let AI summarize a bunch of work documents that you probably weren't going to read anyway. Or let it suggest a few names for some background NPCs and then put your own spin on it. But don't let it replace musicians who put in thousands of hours learning their instrument to convey thoughts and ideas and meaning and emotion to other people. Or to replace visual artists who are mastering their craft. Or, we're a civilization that kind of grew up telling stories around a campfire, so don't let it tell your stories for you either. I think that as human beings, it is much more valuable to put in your own time to learn to do these things, to improve, or to ask another human being, not AI, for help. Yes, AI can give you that quick hit of creativity, but I would rather see a flawed product that was worked on by a human being trying to tell me something than a flawed product generated through AI. I also think there are, primarily one very big concern with me with using AI for so many things that kind of comes in two different explanations. The first is how people talk about AI replacing workers, replacing jobs, and how, it's not that big of a deal. It's just the next industrial revolution. We used to do manual labor, then we invented machines to do said labor, and we were better off as a society for it. And this is just the next big thing in that. I think that's a very, very flawed analogy though, because we human beings suck at labor. We are not very big or fast or powerful. We do have much better fine motor skills than other creatures, sure, but a lot of that big manual work we were never good at in the first place. It's not what we prided ourselves on, and frankly, when we did need a lot of manpower, it usually came in the form of slavery, so yes, we were definitely better off without that. And you know what? We are bad at being big and physical because we put so much of our developmental energy as children growing up, not into muscles and reflexes and things, but into growing our brains. We are creatures designed around our brains. So sure, let's not use our muscles, our bodies that frankly weren't that good at what they did in the first place, but we are the most intelligent creatures on this planet. Let's not replace our brains. The other way I think about this, let's please not replace our brains idea, is one that is kind of a little bit hard to talk about. I'm sure most of us have had at least one point that sort of dreaded existential thought or conversation about what happens if my body breaks down. What happens if, my body does not age very well? We're all getting older. What happens if I suffer a terrible accident and I am now paralyzed, or I lose limbs, something like that? A lot of people say, whether they're looking for a silver lining or it's just genuinely how they feel, as long as my head, as long as my brain, as long as my cognitive abilities are still intact, I am still me. And that is the part of us that we are now gleefully shoving out the window for some random, stupid AI-generated art. So both of those kind of examples there are to say, we collectively, as humans, value our thoughts, our personality, our emotions so much. It is what makes us us. That is the primary thing that separates us from everything else on this planet. So what happens to us if we decide that thinking is no longer important? So how does this relate to TTRPGs? Well, this is a few years old already, but I know Nonat did a video in which he covered Hasbro laying off a bunch of people in the art department working on D&D, and then posted jobs for some AI engineers. Thankfully, I have not seen anything like that from Paizo. I have seen the topic of AI coming up in the Pathfinder 2e subreddit a few times, and I've got to say, from what I saw there, most of the community agrees with me and basically says, please do your own work. You're playing this game with friends to make a connection. Don't use AI to write a story or anything like that for you. Again, I'm okay with like little bits of AI as like jumping off points, but when you're trying to make connection with a friend, like put in the work yourself. I think it's going to turn out better. And I have seen some creators using AI assets in some of their work, thumbnails, things like that. And of course, I still haven't seen this much in Pathfinder specifically, but there's the whole genre of content creation of, I let ChatGPT, and then you give a prompt to ChatGPT and see what it says. Thankfully, again, I don't see a lot of that in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, so please, let's not start doing it. I really am glad that, for the most part, I am seeing Pathfinder, Paizo, the overall community, staying relatively AI-free. I know, for one, I am doing my part to do so. So you're probably thinking at this point, hey Rebel, do you use AI? And I will admit, I can think of at least 2 instances where AI was used on this channel. One, I didn't know it at the time, but I was working on a short and I wanted a little bit of cheesy road trip music. So I went through the asset browser in Wondershare Filmora, which is the editing software that I use. I grabbed something, I used it. Months later, when I opened up that same file for whatever reason, I saw a little AI tag in the corner of the asset that I used, indicating that it was an AI-generated asset. I removed the video. 2, Filmora has this AI enhancement voice feature that I've used on a few videos where I have alternate mic setups, so not in a video like this, or pretty much anything that you see at my desk, but it did a pretty good job. It was doing better than manual manipulation, so I left it. Though I will honestly say, I think that AI voice enhancement, like so many things that we see as labeled as, an AI tool now, are not actually AI. AI means something specific, okay? It's a linked neural network. if it is just algorithmically driven, meaning we take a look at the frequencies represented in this wave, or if it's recorded as a wave or a FLAC or whatever, and we know where the human voice lies and we see the strongest recurring bands, so that way we can identify that is where the frequencies of this particular human are, and then we know based on that what to boost, what to cut. It's not AI. That is just programming. That's just an algorithm. And I think, frankly, for a lot of tools we see, that's actually what we have. It's just there's so much AI hype. People just want to say, I used AI, even if it doesn't actually need to be used for the result that they're after. And I think this subsequently leads to another problem I see, which is people assuming everything is AI, even though it was never advertised as such, and even though it doesn't really make much sense. I remember one comment I got on video years ago was about my eye line and asking if I was like using AI to adjust it. And like, no, I was bad at reading the script as I am now. And sometimes you can see my eyes looking at notes. I know there are tools that apparently do that now, but I don't think there were at the time. It's just weird. Everyone thinks everything is AI, and it's just like, nope, that's just how creating music works, or that's just how writing a script works. We've been doing it forever. We don't need AI for everything. I just think it's kind of odd that people jump to assuming things must be AI when it's just standard, well-entrenched work streams in those disciplines. It, to me, sort of indicates that a lot of people aren't taking the time to learn the basics of a lot of tasks, of anything anymore. So anyway, back to AI use and non-use on my channel. Just to kind of go through some of the things that I do and shout out the people who created them. The tavern background that I use in a lot of my branding and videos and things like that was purchased from iStockPhoto.com, and it's from Ian Good Photography. I've used other photos from Unsplash.com. That is a great resource for going and grabbing images, as long as you credit the artist with them. I, of course, use Paizo for some character art. I designed the wax seal logo that you see on a lot of my stuff and the paper texture backgrounds and everything myself in Photoshop. I do the background music and theme music and little transition music like this. Hope that was long enough. I do use some other background music from Wondershare Filmora when I have like silly little bits and extras. And I know now to look for the AI tag, and I do not use things that are tagged with AI in that. And I have never, nor will I ever, use AI to help me read or write content. Now, I realize this does come from a bit of a place of privilege because this is not cheap and this does not take no time. I don't have kids. I have time. I can afford to run this channel at a loss, though if you would like me to not run this channel at a loss, leave a comment, like, subscribe, help boost my numbers, and you can also join my membership, which I now have available, just one simple tier, a couple of behind the scenes and extra videos, and I will be doing some members early releases in upcoming stuff. So check that out. Anyway, to wrap things up here, I fear that if we stop valuing human contribution to work, to our own work, we're just going to see a race to the bottom. If we all say, AI is good enough, or that we can't afford to do more, or we don't have the time to do more, well, then artists and other creators are out of a job, or at least out of being able to keep a self-sustaining hobby going. And then I fear kind of a downward spiral where nobody cares about how art is made, or if it's good, if it's great or not, just as long as it's something. So therefore, nobody can afford to create it, and all human contribution to that sphere just sort of stops. And then we won't even have new artwork to steal, to train your model on, because we'll talk about the number of times that these companies have been caught just blatantly stealing things from artists. And eventually we just have a whole bunch of mediocre, meaningless nothing. Or as I like to call it, the D&D rulebook. Sorry, I got to get a dig in there. I am a Pathfinder channel after all. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and please, write it yourself.